Hello, everyone. I thought it would be a good time to let you know that recently I set up a Patreon page. The purpose was to get some support to help cover some of the costs of the Recovery After Stroke podcast. Since 2017, I've been covering all the costs to keep this podcast running, but now I'm reaching out to our amazing community for a little help. By subscribing to our Patreon, you're directly supporting the ongoing production of the podcast. Your contribution helps cover essential costs related to recording, editing, and hosting, ensuring the podcast remains available to every stroke survivor who needs it. Your support will help us continue to transcribe each episode into subtitles for the YouTube version of the show, ensuring accessibility for listeners with hearing challenges. Our dedicated virtual assistant in the Philippines spends around 4 hours transcribing each episode and handles various behind the scene tasks that keep the podcast running smoothly. Your contribution will also cover the ongoing costs of monthly website hosting, regular maintenance, and storage for new episodes. This ensures that the podcast continues to operate smoothly and remains accessible to everyone in the community, as well as helping me with my goal to build the largest database of interviews with stroke survivors in the world, so no stroke survivor ever has to think that they are alone on the recovery journey. Membership starts at $5 a month, and you can join our Patreon community by going to www.patreon.com/recoveryafterstroke today and help us continue providing valuable content for stroke survivors and their families. Your support makes a world of difference. Thank you for your generosity. This is episode 316 of the Recovery After Stroke podcast. Today we have an extraordinary story of resilience and transformation as we chat with Jenna Muscat. At just 22 years old, Jenna experienced an ischemic stroke due to a cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, a life-altering event that reshaped her future. Join us as Jenna shares her remarkable journey of overcoming this challenge, navigating the complexities of stroke recovery, and addressing mental health struggles. From facing intense fear and anxiety to finding strength in vulnerability and advocacy, Jenna's story is a testament to the power of perseverance and community support. Let's dive into Jenna's inspiring recovery story and learn how she continues to thrive and inspire others in their path to stroke recovery. Jenna Muscat, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks for being here. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
So I was 24 when I had my stroke. I'm 28 now, so it was almost 4 years ago. It'll be 4 years in late August, early September. But essentially, I was just a very happy 24-year-old. I was a month away from graduating with my master's from Pepperdine in behavioral psychology. I had a great job. I was just doing really well in life and everything was going fine for me. And then one day I woke up with a headache. And I kind of got headaches a lot, so it wasn't out of the ordinary for me. But this headache was very different and it didn't respond to, any kind of medication. I went to the emergency room. They gave me a pain shot, sent me home, took the edge off just the slightest bit, went back the next day, and the headache's just increasing during this time. They do the same thing, give me a pain shot, send me home. I sleep, I wake up, same thing, but now I have just extreme nausea, just throwing absolutely everything up. So I go back to the emergency room and they do a brain scan on me, just a CT scan, no scans with contrast or anything. It comes back fine. They say, like, look, at this point, you just have a migraine and you're really anxious. So here is some Valium, and they send me home. And then some other really scary symptoms started showing up, just like a loss of balance. I couldn't really walk. I couldn't walk. My hearing started to go out. I had really bad tinnitus in my ears. My vision started to go out. My peripheral vision was almost completely gone. And if I would move my head in any position. If I would stand up, sit down, it would go completely dark for, 10 seconds. I couldn't figure out how to do things such as open doors. I would go up to a door and feel all over it and have no idea what to do to open it, but yet I couldn't even connect the dots in my mind that I didn't know what to do. So at this point, my dad said, I'm taking you back to the hospital. And I was in my room at the time. And he said, wait here, I'm going to go get my keys and we'll take you to the hospital. And during that time, I guess I thought I could go to the bathroom by myself. And I don't really know what happened after that, but I woke up on the floor in the bathroom and my dad was like trying to shake me to get me to go up. So to wake up. So not really sure what happened there, but after that took me to the emergency room. They still didn't really want to admit me, honestly, because I had just had a clean brain scan the night before, and they were pretty certain at this point that it was anxiety. Because I will say, like, at this point, my anxiety was super bad with the symptoms I was having, and everyone telling me I was fine. But they did agree to admit me. And then the next morning, they ran just a whole battery of tests. The first scan they did was a CTA angiogram with contrast. And about 5 minutes after that scan was done, I had multiple doctors rush into my room. And I knew as soon as that happened, like something's not right. And the doctor that came in looked at me and she goes, are you on birth control pills? And I was really confused. I was like, yeah, why? Like they were actually sitting on my hospital table because I had been so sick the days before I had forgotten to take them. And she goes, you can never take them again in your life. And I was just so confused. I had no idea what she was talking about. And I remember looking at my dad looking at me, us looking at her. She was like, your brain is full of massive blood clots. You're having a stroke. She said the scan of your head also picked up the top parts of your lungs, and you're also having a pulmonary embolism. They said, we need to get you to the ICU right now to start treatment. And from there, it was just kind of a blur. I was in the hospital for about a week on anticoagulation treatment, IV heparin, trying to break up some of the clot in my brain. And I had to go through a bunch of blood tests before I could transition to oral blood thinners and go home. But it was a lot. And then when I was in the hospital, they did an additional scan of my entire lungs and found an additional pulmonary embolism. But yeah, that's kind of my stroke and what happened to me up to that point.
Jeez. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's intense. I'm just listening to it and thinking, surely they got her back to the, surely they checked her, surely they did this, surely they did that. But what
yeah,
they did is they judged you on your external appearance. They said, she's young, she looks fine, she doesn't have
yeah,
slurring, she doesn't have a droopy face, so it's probably nothing. Um,
yeah. And I think that's been like kind of the hardest part for me is just I'll never be able to wrap my head around like how me going to the emergency room with these symptoms and then having my medication list, knowing I'm on hormonal birth control pills, how no one thought maybe we should check to make sure it's not a stroke.
do you know
I'll
why
never it.
I think one of the reasons is because of the hormonal birth control pill, is very rarely connected to stroke. So on the back of the pack, it says all the different side effects, and stroke is one of them. But
Mhm.
nobody really has that conversation and actually talks about it. It's so commonly used by so many women that
Yeah.
nobody really thinks about it like that. And most
Y-
women
Yeah.
haven't had a
If you
stroke.
do, yeah, and if you do, know about it, you never think it's going to happen to you.
Yeah, right.
You think every pill has a side effect anywhere from a rash to death. You're like, of course that's not going to happen to you, but it's going to happen to someone, and it could be you. It was me.
I've
And
been doing these interviews now for about 312 episodes, something like that. And
yeah,
the amount of women that I've spoken to who have had a stroke, who were around your age and say up until their mid 30s,
yeah,
because, well, nobody said it was because of the birth control pill, but who were on a birth control pill.
yeah, you
Uh,
can't definitively say because there's no, so I've learned this, you can't
yeah,
definitively say because there's obviously no test to confirm it. It's
yeah.
just a process of elimination from things you can test for, which I think also makes people downplay the role of birth control because
Mm.
there is no test to confirm it. So, people will speculate, well, you can't prove that. But, I had every blood test in the book trying to identify why this happened to me, from, genetic factors to autoimmune disorders to cancer. I had every test in the book. None of it was flagged. Like, my only risk factor was hormonal birth control pills. But I think because you can't put a definitive, diagnosis on that, like, people just downplay it and no one takes it seriously.
Yeah. And also, what they don't do is when they prescribe the birth control pill, is they don't do genetic testing to see if the person has a blood
Yeah,
clotting disorder, and
yeah,
therefore, if that person does and they're on birth control pill, the risk of having clots occur because of the fact that they are both genetically predispositioned to it, and also then on the blood clotting on the birth control pill, then the chances of having blood clots goes through the roof. So, did you have an underlying uh, physical reason as to the potential for blood clots?
when I had my stroke, no, not to my knowledge, I did not have any kind of underlying clotting disorders. After my stroke, I had a whole hematology panel done by a hematologist, testing for, just like what we were talking about, any kind of genetic factor, anything about me that would make me more prone to blood clotting. And all of those tests came back normal.
Oh,
So I'm just one of the very unlucky people.
yeah, indeed. How long did you spend in hospital?
I was in the hospital in the ICU for about a week, but the onset of my symptoms from when they started to when I got in the hospital and they finally agreed to admit me was about a week as well.
And then you went straight home, or did you have to deal with some deficits that you had to overcome?
I went straight home. I will say I was very lucky in my physical recovery from my stroke. There really was no lasting physical or cognitive impairments, which I am eternally grateful for, obviously. So after I was able to transition to Eliquis, which is a blood thinner in pill form, I was able to go home. And I kind of thought that once they sent me home, that meant that I was fine, and I wasn't fine. And I think that's kind of where my mental battles started, is they sent me home and I was still in an extraordinary amount of pain. I still had the same symptoms I had when I was in the hospital, because at the end of the day, I still had something in my brain that wasn't supposed to be there. That clot didn't just magically go away. It
Mm.
was still there. So all my symptoms were also still there. And it was honestly terrifying.
So you're thinking, this is how I felt when I went to hospital. Now I'm at home and I'm feeling the same. And it's supposedly
Yep.
everything's going to be better. And I'm also got these clots within me. And you're probably wondering, what does that mean for my future?
Yeah, I kind of felt like I was made of glass. I just thought, at any point I was just going to drop dead. And it was like this massive weight on me that I'll never be able to put into words. But throughout my whole recovery, and, honestly, almost 4 years later, even now, I still struggle with just feeling like the sky's about to fall on top of me, because that's what happened before.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
And everyone told me I was fine, and every medical test said I was fine. And all of those people and tests were wrong. So now it's like, I don't trust myself, I don't trust my body, and I certainly don't trust doctors.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Your education and the particular field that you were studying in, was it psychology?
Behavioral psychology, yes.
Behavioral psychology. Okay. So now you kind of have an insight into, or you have an understanding of kind of how people go about behaving, making decisions, all that kind of stuff. Are you using what you learned in the past to kind of get your head around, to wrap your head around all the decisions that were made at the hospital? Are you overthinking that part of it? Like, where are you at with that whole experience?
So basically, my job in behavioral psychology is I kind of decipher why people do what they do because there's always a reason or a function for our behavior. And it'll always haunt me looking back, like, what is it about me that made these doctors not care about my life? What did I say? What did I look like? Like, what was it that made it not worth it to them? And it's definitely something that's haunted me and that I've thought on a lot, over these past 4 years. And you'd think that those feelings and, wonders in your head would eventually subside, but they don't. They don't subside.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not you. So it sounds like you've taken it personally.
at first I did. I will say, like, when my stroke first happened to me, I didn't know anything about strokes.
Mm.
I didn't know anything. And so I thought that, and the way I was diagnosed, the way I was kind of treated initially in the hospital, I thought I had a really bad experience. So I was like, it's fine. These things happen. Like, I just had a bad experience and that's okay. I can take that and I'll be fine. But after I, started recovering, I joined support groups. I started advocating on social media and connecting with other survivors. And very quickly, I learned that I didn't have a bad experience. I had a very normal experience, especially for young women. Um, and I think I kind of thought there would be some sort of closure in that. Like, I'm not the only one that dealt with it, but it almost was worse because I was like, this is just how it is. Like, how do we fix this? So if this happened to me and all of these other people, it's going to keep happening. And not everyone's going to have as good of an outcome as I did. And it just honestly was very heavy because I didn't know what to do to fix it. It's like when it's a problem that's this big and this systematic, it's the systematic failure of our healthcare system. How do you fix a problem that big? Like, I'm one person whose voice didn't matter when I was in the hospital, how do I fix it? So
And you'd think that your voice would matter when you go into hospital and say, I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that and I'm experiencing this and I'm
I feel like when
experiencing
you
that.
when you go to the hospital, you expect the doctors to do their job. You expect them to take you seriously. And I felt like because I was a young woman complaining of head pain that had a seemingly clear CT scan, she must be fine. She must just be anxious. And I was brushed aside. And that sucked,
Yeah,
honestly.
big time, big time. Your experience is not uncommon for women, probably. Uh, I don't know
Yeah.
about my experience as far as a man goes. Right? I can only speak about that, but also anecdotally, what people have told me who I've interviewed, it's been
Yeah.
a cross section of the community, be it males, females, white, black, Asian, doesn't matter. Like, there's been lots of people who I've interviewed who said, I went to the hospital, I told them what I was feeling, and they said, you've got a migraine. Or at your age, they said you were drunk, or you're taking some drugs. What drugs have you taken? That kind of stuff. And people were made to wait, etc. Um, to to be as to be as lucky to be able to go back time and time again, that should have been a red flag for them. But I think one of the challenges is that the medical systems, all of them, doesn't matter who I speak to, doesn't matter what country they're in, are all under pressure. They're all lacking funding. They're all dealing with too many people. They're all overworked. They're all
Mhm.
stressed. They're all got those things. And what they would prefer is to have one less patient. And if, they see uh, X amount of patients that come in that fit your description, that have had a headache and kind of wasn't nothing and they managed to give you some painkillers and send you away and got you off their books, so to speak, that made their workday a little bit easier. And it's not personal, obviously, and it's not um um it's probably not malpractice or anything like that, but it is probably an attempt to decrease their workload and just deal with supposedly quote unquote people who are worse off than you or need more help than you, right? So then it's about patient advocacy, right? It's how does a patient go into the hospital and know that they have to advocate for themselves? So, you're in your 20s, you've never had a stroke before, you've never been unwell before. And how are you possibly going to know that what you need to do is go back and insist, no, there's something that
I
is
think
wrong with me?
I think that's my biggest thing now is had I had the knowledge then that I have now about strokes and about, the risks of birth controls, it wouldn't have changed anything. I would have still gone on birth control. Everything has side effects, but I would have been able to better advocate for myself and get myself treatment faster. I would have known the things to say. I would have known the test to ask for. You assume that the doctors will do that for you, but obviously that's not always the case. And so my biggest thing is just increasing awareness and helping educate people that this can happen. None of the advocacy work I do is to stray people away from birth control pills. I think it's a great resource for so many women.
Mm,
But I think, knowledge is power and it could save your life. And I want everyone else to have the knowledge that I didn't have when it happened to me, because it would have really changed things.
do you have other people that you know in your circle that are on the birth control pill?
Yeah.
Mm. And have
Hmm.
you guys had a chat about that, or has it not been appropriate?
I mean, I talk with anyone about my experience, and I will never, still to this day, I don't think birth control is evil. I think it's a great resource for so many women. I think there
Mm,
needs to be more conversations around the risks and the side effects. I think there needs to be more education on that. And that's my biggest thing. I never want to tell people it's bad or it's wrong, but I want to tell people that this can happen to you. This is how to recognize it, and this is what you do about it.
mm,
So that's my biggest thing. And I think that's a big misconception people have is that, I just think it's this evil, horrible thing that everyone should get off of. And that's very much not true. I
mm.
just wish that everyone had the education that I wish I had back then, so that
Yeah.
everyone can make the decisions that are right for them.
And also, I think it's important if somebody's going to go down that path is that they understand that perhaps they need to do some uh, testing to see whether or not they have a blood clotting disorder to ensure
Yeah.
that
I
they
will
are.
say most of the, people I've connected with that have had strokes, a lot of them have had these underlying genetic conditions or, autoimmune disorders that increase their risk of clotting, and they didn't know it till something bad happened. So I'm like, okay,
Mm,
well, do we need to test everyone for these disorders, before we put them on hormonal birth control pills? Like, maybe let's have a conversation about that.
absolutely.
Because even though that wasn't the case for me, that's the case for a lot of people.
Mm. Yeah, I think it needs to be part of here's the prescription, and also here's some information about other conditions that you need to be aware of, that you need to take some action on. Perhaps um, you need to investigate the possibility that that you need to learn about yourself, your body, and what is happening
Yeah.
in your body before you go down the path of adding a complication to it. While you're trying to do this good thing, you're trying to be proactive and prevent um, unnecessary or unwanted pregnancies. So you want to do the right thing, you're taking the right steps, you're doing all the right things, and then yet they I feel like they're like missing a key bit of information for somebody who's about doing the right thing, who's trying to make the right
Yeah.
choice. And
Yeah.
that's really the part that frustrates me when I speak to women who've had a stroke and they were on the birth control pill, because then that part of the and there's also that whole we don't really think it was that and it probably wasn't that, and it's a real challenging scenario. Like I find
Yeah.
it very difficult to hear. Just a quick break, and we'll be right back to the interview. Now, just imagine a life where the impossible becomes possible, where the challenges of stroke recovery transform into a story of triumph and growth. Well, this is my story, and I've captured it all in my new book, The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened. I know firsthand the emotional roller coaster of stroke recovery, the fear, the uncertainty, the frustration. I've been there. And through my journey, I discovered that a stroke, while devastating, could become a catalyst for profound personal growth and positive change. In this book, I share my deeply personal story and that of another 9 stroke survivors, offering you a roadmap to not only navigate your recovery, but to thrive in ways you never thought possible. Are you ready to turn your challenges into opportunities, to find strength in your struggles? The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened is more than a book. It's your companion on this journey, a source of inspiration and a testament to the power of the human spirit. To get your copy from Amazon today, follow the links in the YouTube description or visit recoveryafterstroke.com/book and embark on a transformative journey towards a brighter, more empowered future, because the best chapters of your life are yet to be written.
It is, and I mean, even, I dealt with that. I went to a cardiologist maybe 6 months after my stroke to, dive a bit deeper into my pulmonary embolisms I had, and he was very adamant, like, "I just don't believe this was caused from birth control pills," and, he had all my medical tests, and it was, the proof was there, like, I have nothing else going on, but he still just would not admit that that was the issue, and that also was hard for me because it was like, "Well, is there something else wrong with me?"
Mm,
I'm already dealing with this insane amount of health anxiety, and now I have this other doctor in my ear telling me again not to trust these other tests, that there's probably something else going on,
mm,
and it's hard.
yeah. You're 4 years out.
Mhm.
How is your health now? Like, where are you actually at with your health? Where are the, uh, is there any more blood clots in there? Have they been gone? Are they gone? Where are you at?
So I was getting regular brain scans for about a year after my stroke, every couple months to check in on the status of the clots in my head. From the beginning, my neurologist told me that there's a high likelihood they're never fully gonna go away because he said what happens is blood clots will calcify, and basically your body will form new blood vessels around it, and at that point it's pretty clinically insignificant, but they're still there, and that's what ended up happening for me, is my clots did calcify in my brain. Some of them did go away, but my main one is still there. And about a year after my stroke, I had already gotten off blood thinners because at that point it was clear that it wasn't going to break it up any farther, and the risk of staying on them outweighed the risk of coming off, especially since I was found to have no other clotting conditions. I was given the green light to come off blood thinners, being that I was no longer on hormonal birth control pills, obviously. Um, but I will say, my mental health really took a big hit with all of this, and my health anxiety was crippling and paralyzing and horrible, and I thought every time I got one of my brain scans that it was gonna tell me if I was gonna live or die. There was absolutely no relief that came with good news because I didn't believe it because my scans were wrong the first time. So I, made the decision with my doctor to forego any additional scans unless something, changed, if I had new symptoms come up. So per my last scan, my clot's still there. I have new blood vessels around it with great blood flow. So that's good. Besides that, my health is pretty good. I will say the kind of health anxiety from this and my just aversion to doctors and hospitals has made me skip a lot of doctor's appointments, and things that I should be keeping up with to check on my health. So that's something I'm still really working through. My mental health is an ongoing battle. The PTSD from a stroke is very, very real, and I don't think enough people talk about it.
No, they certainly do not. It's the thing about stroke, like it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's just so ongoing. It's not funny. I'm 12 years out, And a few months ago, I did my book launch. About 6 weeks ago, I did my book launch, and I had this speech prepared and this presentation and everything. I got up there literally within about 3 minutes. I was crying in front of all the people who I was doing this presentation to.
Yeah.
Just the discussion of the process, the thing that I went through at the very beginning 12 years ago, triggered this emotion that I thought kind of was not really there, not in that way,
Yeah.
like not that raw, and I couldn't control it. And anyway, I took a few deep breaths and I kept going, and then sure enough, a few minutes in, further down into the presentation, it happened again and it happened again, and I just couldn't understand. No, I can understand it, but I I thought that I had moved beyond that phase of my
Yeah.
mental health recovery. And I have
Yeah.
a long way, like I've come a long way, like heaps, but still, it could be the right day and the right place and the right audience, and it's just sets me off. I, and then I'm wondering,
It's like
okay,
one step forward, 100 steps backwards.
yeah,
I
it's
get
like
it.
how did I get here? And then I realized, okay, well, I've got more work to do. There's way more work to do.
Yeah, I think I've learned at this point that, I always told myself when I was recovering from my stroke, I was like, if I can just get like the green light from the doctor to come off blood thinners, if I can just get a good brain scan, like I kept telling myself these milestones, like if I can do this, then I'll feel better. And then one by one, I hit all those milestones, yet I had never felt worse. And I think it was that realization, like, this is never going to go away. And this is just going to be a part of me. And I have to accept that and learn, how am I going to take this thing that has seemingly like destroyed my life and broken me down, and how am I going to make it the thing that makes me stronger? And yeah, it's hard.
Being so young,
Mhm.
and I'm only saying this because I remember how thick I was when I was around 21, 22 years old. Like being so young and having just sort of finished school and all the things that uh, you do when you're coming into adulthood. Do you feel like you were under equipped to deal with that kind of a situation just because of your lack of life experience?
I don't know that under equipped is what I would say, unprepared. I think when you're young, you feel invincible. I know for me, like, I know bad things happen. I've seen them happen to people around me. You never think they're going to happen to you. And then it does. And you very quickly realize that life is just incredibly unpredictable in like the most heartbreaking way. Like you can be fine one second and gone the next. Like I remember when I lost consciousness in my bathroom before my dad found me. Like I just remember everything going black. Like I so just like it was just I was there and then nothing. And that could have been where it ended. And I think facing death so young is, I think it's a good and a bad thing. It's a situation that I think altered my life in such a massive way. I'll always say like my stroke is the worst thing that ever happened to me and it's the best. I wouldn't take it back. It was hell, but I think I'm a better person because of it. I think I live my life in a much better way now. It affects every decision I make now because it's like I know what it's like to lay in a hospital bed and to have like these end of life regrets, almost thinking that you're going to die. Like I so distinctly remember laying in the emergency room. My dad was there, he was talking to the doctors, and I so distinctly remember thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to ruin my family's life. Like I remember thinking that I was just this like cannonball that was just going to implode and just hurt everyone around me. And I remember going through my family and thinking, what is my brother going to do when I'm gone? What about my mom? What about my dad? Like, are they ever going to be okay again? And that is something like that honestly haunts me a lot, like having those thoughts. But I think it's also just changed me in such a good way. So I'm never one to like to sugarcoat things, or I don't like just like toxic positivity, but I think if you can take something really bad that happened to you and find the good in it, then there's nothing toxic about it. I think that's just making the most of it. So
I love your concern about other people. Like in the worst time of your life, you're concerned about other people. And it
I
reminds me,
so I so distinctly remember it too. Like I just remember the chaos ensuing around me. At this point, like honestly, I had accepted that I was going to die. Like it wasn't a question. Like I thought I was going to die, and I just remember thinking, like my dad, he had just bought a piece of land in Utah to build his dream house that he had talked about our whole lives, that he had worked so hard for. He had just bought a piece of land 3 weeks earlier, and I remember thinking, like, is he still going to build the house once I'm gone? I remember thinking, like, I hope he still builds it. And I think that was the hardest thing, is just thinking that I was just going to ruin the people around me and I wouldn't be here to pick up the pieces. And that was hard.
I can't imagine how hard it is. My particular experience was similar. So I'm sitting there lying in the hospital, and we've got a large Greek family. Everyone loses their shit as soon as something's wrong with somebody, right? And then
Um,
what happened was, for me, they had to I had to tell the parents and the grandparents and, sorry, my parents and the extended family, my in-laws and all that kind of stuff. And they all, just they're all panic merchants, right? They all go nuts. And then I remember thinking, like, I've got to pretend that I'm better than I am, because if I appear to be better than I am, then hopefully they can all remain calm.
yeah,
And the more calm they are, the more calm I can be. And then
yeah,
we can have a better, more calmer approach to the whole what the hell's going on, situation in those very early days.
yeah,
And the thing about me is, they thought um, nothing of it initially, because I played it down as much as I possibly could. But then 6 weeks later, when I had another bleed, well, then that kind of threw a spanner in the works. My plan to stay calm and pretend that I'm okay and all that kind of stuff went out the window. And
yeah.
then when it happened again, uh, almost 2.5, 3 years later, for the third time, then it was like, sorry guys, like, I've let you down. I've pretended that everything's okay, but it's probably not. And then we had to do brain surgery. And then it's like throwing them again into the deep end of crazy emotions, like, what's going on? Where are we at with this thing? And why are you still unwell? And how serious is this? And then waking up from brain surgery, not being able to walk again, it not being able to walk initially, and then learning to walk again and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like the whole thing was about how was about how do I keep them not being traumatized by this while I'm being traumatized by it the whole time. And then I thought about my kids and my wife, and it
Yeah.
was ridiculous that I would even be
Well,
doing that. I should be focusing on myself, but I couldn't help it, like you.
it's a lot. And I think a lot, I think there's such a negative connotation with being selfish. Like we always just need to put other people first, but I think sometimes you have to put you first. And I think, obviously for me and you, that's something we struggle with, even if, we're the ones suffering from it. But at least in my perspective, I would rather myself suffer because I can control
Mm,
that.
mm,
I don't want someone else to suffer because I can't control that. So,
yeah. I also love what you said a bit earlier about the fact that it's the worst thing that happened to you and the best thing that happened to you, right? So I'm not sure if you know about my book, but
I did, and I caught what's the book title again? Something along those lines. The
it,
best, yeah,
the
an
unex-
unexpected way that a stroke became the best thing that ever happened. I mean, I completely agree. I
and it's
completely agree. Not to take away from how horrible it was,
mm-mm.
because it was horrible and it was awful and it was traumatizing, and I'll live with it for the rest of my life, but I wouldn't take it back.
It's from a personal growth perspective that it's the best thing that happened to you, right? It's clearly not
Yeah.
from a medical perspective, right?
Yeah.
No one's
Yeah.
saying, yeah, let's have a stroke, like it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
No
No,
chance.
would not recommend.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think if you're able to take that perspective and use it to your advantage, like your stroke can either make you or break you. You can let it
Mm,
be the anchor that sinks you, or you can let it be the thing that makes you better than you were before. And I don't think it's always that black and white. Like I'm not saying this as if I have this, philosophical approach to everything and I don't still have hard days. Like I'm on so many anxiety medications trying to control my health anxiety. I cry about my stroke. I have nightmares where I wake up in dripping sweat, feeling like I'm paralyzed again. But, still we persist and we move forward because what else are you going to do?
Absolutely nothing. You can't curl up in a ball and capitulate. You definitely can't do that. There is no point in that. That whole thing we spoke about, that's going to make your family even more uncomfortable and feel bad about the whole situation and not know what to do and be worried about you. Um, so I think learning about what you can do to get better and overcome the things that you need to overcome, and then accepting the things that you can't overcome, that's really what the game is about. It's about what do you do to take the next step forward, even though you've had a number of setbacks and you're taking those knocks, and then you end up 10 steps back or 50 steps back, and then you've got to go forward. It's like, I'm always, what can I do to take me the next step forward? The podcast was that first. It, it wasn't the first thing. The first thing I did to take a step forward was get up and talk on behalf of the Stroke Foundation and do stroke prevention talks. I did that
Mhm.
year one. After that, I used to do, I went and got personal development courses that I attended so that I could develop my skills and work on my emotions and find new ways to navigate my daily life, right? And to achieve some of my goals. Then somebody gave me a challenge and said to me, maybe you want to share what you've been learning. How do you want to share that? And I thought, I'll just do that in my local community. I'll do some talks or whatever. And then they gave me the challenge of, well, there's this thing called the internet, so why don't you share it on the internet, right? And then I thought, okay, I'll do that. And I started the podcast. And then I wrote the book. Like, all the things that I've done are all about me looking for the next thing to help me get to the next thing that's going to make me feel better, um, deal with this better, feel like it was, what's the word, like it was a thing that happened to me so that it could kick my butt so that I could get on with things, right? So I could take some positive steps in the right direction. Not that I wasn't, but when I compare myself today to the guy that I was before, like, I was a pretty mundane, kind of boring kind of guy, still doing all the amazing things like raising a family and working and meeting with friends and all that kind of stuff. But there was no real
I mean,
substance.
I'm definitely the same way. I look at myself before and I was such a wallflower. I walked into a room and almost apologized for being there. I saw
Mm.
great things happen to my friends. I never thought they were going to happen for me. I never put myself out there. I was scared of failure, rejection. And those are all still things I struggle with, but now I just do everything scared and I do it anyway. Because it's like I'd rather do that than do nothing. I think, after I had my stroke in the hospital, you think on your life, right? You think of these like end of life regrets almost. And like almost everything I regretted was things I hadn't done, things I was too scared to do. And so now I try to use that to change how I live my life now. And it doesn't always abide by that. I still struggle with being scared of, so many things, but, you try your best to work through it and to not make the same mistakes you made before.
I love the fact that you said that, like, you do it scared anyway.
Do it scared. I mean,
Yeah.
do it
And what
scared or don't do it at all. What are you going to regret more?
and what have you learned, like, about fear?
I've learned that fear, I think a lot of people don't truly understand what fear is, right? Because we always think, oh, I'm scared to do this, I'm scared to do that. But then something that happens in your life that shows you what fear really is, right? Like nearly dying. And then you realize that that kind of fear is, the fear of rejection is nothing compared to that. Like, you think about it and like it's all so insignificant. Like we're literally like on a floating rock in the middle of space. Like it's not that serious. And I think, this sounds all so philosophical, and I promise I'm not always like that. And I still struggle immensely with putting myself out there and taking risks and chances, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, it's good to have bouts of philosophy to
Yeah.
stuff everything up, right? And to, like, test you and to make you make a choice and make a decision that you struggled to make for such a long time. That's
Almost
what's
like just pushing the baby bird out of the nest and saying, "Fly," you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Probably hit the ground, but that's fine, I'll try again, or, I'll get up tomorrow, I'll have an hour and I'll cry about it, but then we'll move on.
yeah.
And
So
I think that's my biggest thing now is whenever I do something where I'm like, "Well, this could go horribly. This could blow up in my face." And before I would have just not done it, but now I'm like, "Well, I'll do it, and if it does blow up in my face, then I will deal with that then." I'm very much so now I will cross that bridge when I get there instead of just being scared to cross it at all.
instead of being,
I think that's a gift that I'm so thankful for.
it's way better to be um, that way instead of kind of being worried and concerned about what might happen that may never happen, right? You worry about all these things. For example, I'm doing a presentation in about a month at a stroke conference, and it's about my
Mhm.
book. And I have to deliver it kind of in a scientific way. They don't want me to go there and talk about my book. I've got 12 minutes. That's all.
Yeah.
And you know, when I signed up for that, I hadn't done the book launch yet. And as a result of that, after I cried at the book launch, I figured, oh my God, I'm going to be in a room in front of clinicians and all these people.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to be doing is crying. But I've
Mhm.
accepted the fact that I've got to do the presentation regardless. I've signed up for it, I've been accepted. Um,
Mhm.
and I've got to accept the fact that I might cry. And I don't know if it's going to be a
That's
good
okay.
day or not a good day, and I don't know, but I've got to go for it. And
Yeah.
what I found is crying in front of an audience anyway, that it sucks them in even further. Like that, you don't lose audience members when you cry. You actually get people to they empathize with you way more, and you have them.
You should never apologize for feeling your feelings,
Yeah, yeah.
Nothing good
But
has ever come from suppressing them. So
yeah, no, absolutely not, right? So that's the thing, and it's like, oh well, I've already signed up. They've already accepted me. You know, what am I going to do? I'm not going to go and present on my book because there's a slight chance I might cry, and the male ego in me doesn't want to go down that path. Whatever.
but imagine yourself, back in the hospital right after your stroke, knowing that years from now you're going to be worried about crying on a stage to give a presentation about what you've survived.
Indeed,
And it doesn't seem that heavy anymore because you're
it
like, well,
doesn't.
damn, that's actually pretty cool.
It doesn't. Indeed, exactly. It. And then I do go back, and I do have those conversations with myself about end of life regrets, and they do come up. Those, if I don't do this, this is going to be an end of life regret. Like, what are you talking
Yep.
about? You're not going to do it. And that's kind of the good part about being in hospital with all the machines attached to me after having a blackout, after not knowing my name, not recognizing my wife. That's the good thing about it is it's like I got past that, and
Mhm.
for the time being, I'm going to make the most of the amount of time that I've got left. And everything I procrastinate doing, before procrastination used to win, now procrastination doesn't win. Everything I am afraid or procrastinate about doing, I find myself kind of in this weird mode that I get into. Like when I applied to do this particular to present at this particular conference, it was just at a moment's ridiculous time. Like I think I was watching TV. It was about 9 o'clock in the evening, and I knew about this stroke conference that it was happening. I said to my wife, "I'm just going to jump online for a second and go and apply for this particular presentation." It was like one of those types of moments. In about 25 minutes after worrying about it or mulling it over in my head for a few weeks, it was done and it was sent across. And then I forgot about it. And then I received an email X amount of weeks later, which said, "Oh, by the way, you've been accepted. Please complete this form." And it's like, I have these crazy kind of moments where my head kind of switches off, everything goes away, all the worrying parts of me kind of just, they have a moment of quiet, and then the true me goes, all right, now's the time, pounce, go and fill out that form and apply for this thing and get it done. That's how the book launch happened as well. The book launch happened because the lady whose cafe it was and the guy who runs the cafe, they said to me, why don't you do a book launch at our cafe? You know, we'll give you the venue, you know, you can bring some people there, etc. I said, all right, that's cool. And I never thought anything of it. And then she booked it. She just said, we're going to do this, and started promoting it. And then I was kind of like, oh, okay.
I
All right
guess this
then.
is happening.
Yeah, thank you. I'll make sure I turn up. Um, so that's kind of how it happens for me now. And I look back. What's cool about that, Jenna, is I look back and I go, "Oh my gosh, you're like you did that. Well done." You know, I really do pat myself on the back.
Yeah. No, I get it in what you were saying about procrastination earlier. I mean, I think my biggest thing now is, again, this sounds so philosophical, but like life is unpredictable. Don't wait around to take the trips. Don't wait around to tell the people you love that you love them. Don't wait around for these perfect opportunities. Just do it now. Do it now. Life is short, it's unpredictable. So if you have the opportunity and you can do the things you want now, make it happen.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. Tell me about your TikTok account. There's almost 10,000 followers there. What kind of posts do you put up there? How has that helped you with your recovery? How has it helped when you found people that are like you?
So I started making TikToks about, gosh, maybe a year and a half, 2 years after my stroke. I started just making silly little TikToks about my stroke, and it kind of just took off. And from there, I started answering people's questions about strokes, and it turned into me just advocating about strokes, advocating about the risk of hormonal birth control pills, advocating for, speaking up for yourself in a hospital and how to advocate for yourself in a hospital. And I have connected with so many amazing people and so many people that unfortunately have stories, very similar to mine, or, they have family members who had, stories similar to mine, but they didn't have the outcome that I, had. And I've been able to connect with some really great people that I still keep in touch with to this day. I think, I found a lot of um, comfort in it. It feels like that if I'm making TikToks and I'm educating people, that I'm making a positive impact, and I'm taking this thing that happened to me. And even though I feel like the problem is so big, maybe I'm, helping one person and it'll save one person's life. Or I and my biggest thing is it keeps me up and it haunts me that this is just going to keep happening to people. So if I can help raise awareness and give someone that knowledge that I wish I had, then I can sleep a little better at night, and it makes me feel a little better about the whole situation.
You really are making a difference. And I know that because I've been doing this now since about 2017, but I've been doing it seriously probably for the last 3 or 4 years, where I'm putting one episode a week out. Um, and it was about 6 months ago, somebody reached out to me and said, credit where credit's due. Because of one of your interviews, I avoided a stroke. And I was like,
Yeah.
tell me more. What happened? And she had a carotid artery. I think she had a vertebral artery dissection. Anyhow, she had a dissection in one of her arteries, and
Mhm.
it caused a headache, a certain headache. And I don't know what keyword she typed into Google search, but she typed the particular keyword that brought up a video that I did with another stroke survivor who had the exact same condition. And the interview was with this with a lady who was describing her symptoms, and this person found that video, listened to it, and thought, "Oh, that's kind of like me, but not similar, not exactly the
Yeah.
same." And then she went onto my YouTube channel and did a search for the particular videos in that playlist, and found another one that was exactly like her symptoms. And then she went to the, she told her husband to take her to the hospital, and they specifically told the doctors exactly what her condition was, what I'm experiencing, and I have a vertebral artery dissection. And of course, they would have thought that she was mad, but they scanned her head and they found the dissection, and she completely avoided a blood clot forming and causing a stroke.
Yeah.
So
I think that just shows you, the importance of, using your voice in your, situation to advocate because it does make a difference. And that's what I hope comes from my situation is I don't want anyone else to have to go through this.
it makes a difference. You may not know about it because in the thousands of downloads that hundreds of thousands of downloads that my podcast has had, that's one person who's actually reached out to say something. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people don't reach out to say something, even though they may be having a positive experience from watching a TikTok or listening to a video, etc. And that's the cool thing about it, right? It really does make a difference. You may not have the evidence because somebody didn't contact you, but it 100% is. And it makes people feel better. And that's the good thing
Yeah.
about socials and um, YouTube and all that kind of stuff. People do get all upset and annoyed about some of the things that happen because of social media, but really, there's so many good things that come out of it. You're using it for the
Yeah, I
perfect
will say,
reason.
I think I've had several people reach out to me and say, since I've been on TikTok, I think more young people are having strokes. And I was like, I don't know that it's more young people are having strokes, as if more young people are able to tell their stories now. Now you're
That's it.
hearing about it. And I think that's kind of the beauty of, platforms such as TikTok is you don't just see posts from your friends, you see posts from strangers, you see things that happen to them, and you're able to learn about just people's lives and the things they've gone through. And I think that that's a really cool side of social media.
Yeah. See, and there's no other way that you could get in front of 934,000 other people when you wanted to share about the side effects of the hormonal birth control pill. Like that video reached nearly 1 million views. That
Yeah.
that's so phenomenal. That is such a great thing. And that's
Yeah.
potentially people in that group that are going to experience something and go, I think I remember hearing something about that somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
I better do
That's
something about this.
that's my biggest hope because I remember being in the hospital and at the time I had no idea what was happening to me and it was terrifying. If I was able to think back to a TikTok that I had seen that said, "Oh, this one girl said this happened to her, maybe that's it." I could have said it to doctors, maybe they would have been like, "You're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about, but let's run that test to get her to shut up." That would have saved me a lot of time and a lot of trauma.
Yeah. And then there's that other video, women deserve better, right? Women's health is the hashtag that I'm seeing on that particular post, 2.3 million views on the fact that you're saying, I went to the hospital, I said this and I said that, and they brushed it off and they gave me Valium instead of looking
Yeah,
at my head and trying to work out what was going on. I mean, that is so powerful because what that's doing is telling people to trust their gut instincts. It's telling them to, persist when they go to the doctor, to not just allow somebody to convince you that there's nothing wrong with you when there in fact is.
exactly. I mean, I think the biggest thing is like all you have in life is your voice and that's all you have to advocate for yourself. And it's really hard when you use that and it still doesn't seem to do anything. And so I think that's where we all just need to learn to advocate for ourselves and also like maybe someone that works in a hospital will see my videos and next time someone comes in complaining of a headache, they'll think twice on it. You know, I just hope something positive comes from it in whatever shape or form that might be.
I know it will. I definitely know it will. And then you've got another video there, 1.8 million views. Like just those videos, all right, 6 million views combined between those three videos, where you're talking
Yeah.
about going to the ER doctor, and the doctor again, dismisses what you said.
Yeah.
Um, it's just it's a great thing that you're doing, and it is going to make a difference, and it is going to give people like an insight into what happens when they have a condition and they go to the hospital and something goes wrong. It
Yeah.
it's an awesome little TikTok page there, and people who are listening and watching, there'll be links in the show notes that you'll be able to go to and connect with Jenna there and follow that TikTok account. I think it's really important that we follow it and then share those videos in our own communities to raise awareness. Tell me, what was the hardest thing about stroke for you?
The mental recovery. 100%. I just, always thought that once I was fine physically, that I would just be fine. And it was like the healthier I got, the worse my mental health got. I mean, no one talks about that part of stroke recovery at all, but like I felt like I had survived a stroke just to have PTSD nearly kill me. Like I felt just paralyzed by fear. I could not be by myself. I could not go to work. I thought the second that I stood up, I was going to drop dead. There was no amount of doctor's reassurance, scans reassurance, test reassurance that convinced me otherwise. I was passing out in the MRI scanner machine getting my scans because my anxiety was so bad. It was horrible. And I felt so alone. And it's not that I didn't have a great support system because I had the best support system. My family and my friends were amazing. But I think at the end of the day, they just didn't get it. Because I feel like to other people, it's like almost like you're being dramatic. Like, you survived this, you're fine, move on with your life. And it's like, I would love to move on with my life, but I have never felt more not fine before. And it was incredibly hard. It's something I still deal with. Just about a year ago, it got really bad again. And it's like, it's like at this point, like, haven't I given enough? Like, hasn't this thing taken enough from me? And, I have learned that this isn't the last time I'm going to have hard days. There's going to be another point in my life where this health anxiety and the PTSD comes back and kicks me down. But I think what, makes it a little easier each time is knowing that I've gotten through it before. It's like when it's bad, every day is a bad day. And then slowly but surely you start to have better days until you don't remember your last bad day. And then inevitably you have another one because I'm certain at this point that healing isn't this, destination where you're just fine. Like, I don't think that that exists. I'm going to deal with this the rest of my life. And in some ways that sucks, but, like, that's okay. These are the cards that I was dealt, and I'm just going to make the best of it. And I'll deal with those hard days when they come and I'll get through them.
You will, and as time goes, you'll get better at dealing with them, and you'll get um, more resilient, and you'll grow a thicker armor, and you'll be able to really uh, look back on it like I do, even though I have these bouts of where it gets me. I look
Yeah.
back on it as such a thing that happened so far away, like such a distance away, that I almost can't connect it to me anymore because it's so far away. I have all this proof that it happened, a scar on my head, a book, a podcast, and all, but it happened so long ago. I can talk about it as if I'm sharing a story rather than something that happened to me. So it's
That's
not
how it feels for me.
re-traumatizing
Like,
me.
when I think about it, it's almost like it feels like a movie I watched or a book that
Mm,
I read because I
mm.
feel so different from that person that I was then that it almost just feels like a lifetime away, yet at the same time, still just like yesterday, but I just feel like I'm such a different person now. It's like that couldn't have happened to me, like, but it did. And it's weird because you get in this weird place of having just such a distinct perspective about it.
Yeah. And that's the power in talking about it and connecting
Yeah.
with other people. That's the power. That's like what you get from doing that. It might feel difficult at the time when you're trying to go to those emotional spots and, battle them and tackle them and talk about them. But eventually what it turns into like this distant memory that you reflect on rather than re-traumatizing yourself every time you speak about it. That's kind of what I've got after 312 episodes or so.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me about what stroke has taught you.
I think it's taught me that life is very short. It's very unpredictable. Just to cherish the now as much as you can. And that sounds so philosophical, but yeah, life is very short. If you want to do something, do it now. Tell the people you love that you love them and treat them like it. And do all the fun things you want to do because, nothing's guaranteed. It's taught me that, you know, as far as, healthcare has come, we still have a long way to go. I think, it's a whole another conversation about the side effects of birth control and why we aren't doing more about that. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest thing I've learned is just life is short. It's painfully short and unpredictable. So do all the things you love and love the people you love and enjoy it while you can, which sounds
Yeah,
a little bit somber, but I don't
it's
mean it in a morbid way of you're gonna die someday, but
it's true. It's still all true. Um,
yeah.
um, what about there's some people listening who are just on their journey. They're starting out now, right? They're looking for advice. Tell me a little, give them, share some advice with somebody who might be going through something similar to what you're going through.
I wish that I had known that my mental health was going to suffer. I wish that I had known that post-stroke PTSD, depression was something that most stroke survivors will deal with. I would say get ahead of it. You've been through something very traumatic. Maybe check out therapy, like just get ahead of it and figure out what those supports are that you need. Take care of your health. Figure out what you need to do for yourself. We talked earlier about, worrying about how other people would react. Like figure out what you need for yourself. Um, and just know that like if you choose to, this can be the thing that makes you better. It can also be the thing that breaks you, and it will try to break you time and time again. But you've had this power to survive this. You also have the power to survive the aftermath.
Yeah, I love that part. That's awesome, right? So I go to counseling irregularly now, but for many years I went regularly once a month for many, many years. And now I
Mhm.
just go kind of whenever I'm feeling um, like I need a bit of a top up.
Mhm.
How are you dealing with all of that stuff, the PTSD and all that? Are you seeing somebody that is supporting you with that other than the medication?
Yeah, so I've been in therapy. I started going to therapy about a year after my stroke when my PTSD really, you know, got really bad. And I think that was really important. I love to read. Couple of books that I've read that are really good. What is it called? The Body Keeps Score is one
Mm.
of the best books that I have ever read. It really helped me understand why it was my PTSD was making me feel the way that I was. And I'm the kind of person, like, I love knowledge. So understanding my anxiety was very big to me. I loved learning about anxiety, especially health anxiety, that in particular. So therapy, reading, find what works for you. Not everyone is the same. Medication for me was life saving, and I know some people want to steer away from that, but for me, it was something that I really needed. And I've tried to get off it a couple times, thinking like, oh, I'm doing better, and then quickly I'll realize like if you weren't doing better, the medicine was just doing what it was supposed to do, and that's okay, because I think for a long time I had the mindset of I don't want to need this crutch for the rest of my life. But trauma is real and it alters the chemistry of your brain, and sometimes you need a little extra chemical help to get through it, and that's okay, and it doesn't make you weak.
And you can keep trying to get off it as time goes. You can keep trying, and that's going to give you a good sense of where you're at. And then you're going to be able to regroup, and you're going to know what else you need to do and how much more work you need to do. And that's okay. Um, and I love what you said about that is that, taking away that kind of stigma from being medicated to help with PTSD or anxiety.
I know for me, like, a big concern of mine getting on medication was, well, this whole trauma that I'm dealing with was caused from a side effect of medication, and now I'm going to get on more medication. Like, what is this going to do to me? But it truly was such an amazing support for me, and still is. And I'm, you know, thankful for the life I live now with the help of therapy and my friends and family and, anxiety medication. It's done wonders for me.
Yeah. Was it easy finding a therapist that you connected with? How do you sort of go about that? What was that like for you?
Oh gosh, I think I've seen 4 therapists. I think it's kind of like dating. You've gotta find, the right fit, and I think a lot of times people can be discouraged because they go to therapy and it wasn't good, but I feel like, you've gotta find your right person, and then when you do that, like, therapy's hard. It's not always sunshine and rainbows and you walk away feeling better. Sometimes it brings up really hard feelings and emotions, but it's an ongoing process, and I would, encourage anyone to stick with it and give it a chance to work, and also, like, if you try therapy and you don't click with your therapist, shop around. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of really amazing people out there, and there's a variety of mental health issues that people deal with. You're not always going to find someone that clicks with what you need, but keep trying.
Yeah. I think that's really important. I know a lot of people say, I've been to one therapist and they're good. I've been to another one and they're good. And I'm sick of trying to find them or whatever. It's really important that you find the person with the right fit because what they do is they create a really safe space for you to do those hard yards, to have that hard conversation that is going to be challenging and draining and whatever. But that's the point of therapy. It's to help you go to those places yet that you
And I think it,
otherwise might not have gone to because it was
I
going
think
to
it
be really hard.
just really helps facilitate, just becoming aware of everything that you've dealt with and how you're feeling about it. Because I think so many times, even if we don't mean to suppress how we're feeling, I know at least for me, I'm very avoidant and I try to bury everything to just not feel it and not deal with it. But, as I've painfully learned it'll always come out.
Yeah. I love also what you said about educating yourself and
Mhm.
learning, the book, The Body Keeps Score, and therefore, like knowing that what you're experiencing, that physical reaction or that anxiety reaction, and you're able to
Yeah.
then to observe yourself, and you can go, well, I know what this is. It's not pleasant. It's
Yeah. That
not
that was a
unfamiliar, but I
yeah.
know what's happening, and it kind of takes the edge off it, does it? Mentally.
It does. My anxiety manifested very physically. Ironically enough, in semi-stroke symptom form, I would
Mm,
feel dizziness, I would feel numbness in my body. So I got stuck in this loop of my anxiety is caused from the stroke, yet my anxiety manifests physically into these almost stroke-like symptoms. But then that's what they told me when I went to the hospital when I was having a stroke, is that it was anxiety. So you get caught in this loop. But I think just me absorbing that knowledge, I mean, I read book after book after book, just learning. And the more I learned, the more faith I had in my own body and my own, nervous system, and understanding like the fight or flight response and panic
mhm.
attacks and what that looks like. Because I think people throw around the word panic attack all the time, but then you're on the floor hyperventilating and your body's numb and you can't move. And you're like, this clearly cannot be just a panic attack, right? Like, this is a medical emergency. So, knowledge is power in all ways, shapes, and forms. And that was one of the biggest things that helped my anxiety, was just learning about it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing and joining me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I think your approach, your philosophical approach to this is to be
Yeah.
commended, and it's really cool that you can come on here and be so open about all the stuff that you're experiencing. Because I think even some other stroke survivors, like it, they may still be feeling like some of the stuff that they're going through is taboo, too taboo in their community to talk about. So they can listen here and feel normal, and feel okay that that it's part of their recovery and that they need to maybe do some work about it. So um, I love the work that you're doing on socials and TikTok. I encourage everyone to go across and go to recoveryafterstroke.com/episodes to find all the social media links. Thanks so much, Jenna.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to reading your book.
Well, that's another episode done. I do hope you enjoyed the discussion. Remember to subscribe to my Patreon page. Visit patreon.com recovery after stroke. You will also find the link in the YouTube description and in the show notes of this episode at recoveryafterstroke.com/episodes. If you want to know more about my amazing guests, also visit recoveryafterstroke.com/episodes to find out their social media links and to download a full interview transcript. A huge thank you to everyone who has already left a review. It does mean the world to me. Your feedback is crucial for the podcast success, helping others discover this valuable content and making their stroke recovery journey a bit easier. If you haven't left a review yet, please consider giving a 5-star rating and sharing what the show means to you on iTunes and Spotify. For those watching on YouTube, remember to leave a comment below, like the episode, and subscribe to the show on the preferred platform to get notifications of future episodes. If you are a stroke survivor with a story to share, come and join me on the show. The interviews are unscripted and require no preparation. Just be yourself and share your experience to help others in similar situations. If you have a commercial product that supports stroke survivors in their recovery, you can join me on a sponsored episode of the show. Simply visit recoveryafterstroke.com/contact, fill out the form with the category that you belong to, and I will get back to you with details on how we can connect via Zoom. Thank you once again for being here and listening. Your support means everything to me. See you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gasiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.